WBUR Podcasts, Boston. This is On Point. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. Walter Johnson had a ritual.
Whenever guys that I knew went home, I would walk guys to the door at this institution named Otisville. It's in New York, upstate New York, and bid them farewell and, wish them luck and just tell them that, you can do it. Stay out there. The longer you stay out there, the better chance guys that's here have of going home.
Otisville is more formally known as Otisville Correctional Facility, a medium security federal prison. While some of his friends got out, Walter Johnson was never going home. In 1997, he was given 5 concurrent life sentences for robbery, cocaine possession, and witness tampering. Johnson was sentenced under the 1994 federal 3 strikes law, which required that repeat offenders serve mandatory life sentences.
I was really, really, really hurt because I felt that 1 life sentence is enough to wake somebody up. But I also felt that he gave me those life sentences because he wanted to set precedents, that he wanted to set an example. He wanted people to know that if they were judged by this law, or if they were found guilty under this law, that it was going to be a harsh penalty. And unfortunately, I was that poster boy for that.
Johnson's sentence was handed down by Judge Frederic Block, who sat on the bench for the Eastern District of New York. At the time of sentencing, Block was in his 2nd year as a federal judge. He referred to Johnson as, quote, a classic example of a person who has to be incapacitated so society is protected against you, end quote. Walter Johnson's criminal history dates back to when he was just 14 years old, growing up in the Cypress Hills projects in Brooklyn, New York.
It was a really, really rough place growing up there. Unfortunately, many of the people that got my eye as a child, they came from the criminal element. And, they made us younger guys feel like being tough and being bad was a badge of honor, and that taking shortcuts was the way. And for many, many years of my life, I believed that that criminal mindset was the reason why I was alive. It made me feel like I was a survivor and that I can endure and overcome anything. But it also made me calloused and inconsiderate and very indifferent, to the feelings of other people.
So Johnson says he hung out with the wrong crowd a lot in his life, a pattern he continued when he started his multiple life sentences at Otisville.
But then you had another group of guys who smiled every day, who seemed very optimistic, who participated in programs. I couldn't understand how people who were never going home could act like they on their way home that day or the next day. And those guys were very intriguing to me. What I did is that I separated myself from the guys who gave up and started associating with the guys that seemed like they were going somewhere.
Johnson began filling his time at Otisville with service. He participated in outreach programs, joined a victim impact group, and served on suicide watch. 5 concurrent life sentences, though, don't usually leave much room for hope. But in 2018, an unlikely sliver of light appeared. On December 21st of that year, in his first presidency, Donald Trump signed the First Step Act into law. The act allows federal judges to reconsider sentences they've handed down, and it allows the people serving those sentences to seek compassionate release. That's exactly what Johnson did.
I wanted the judges to know is that I was a person who had self-control, who had patience, who was empathetic, towards the feelings of other human beings, who wanted more out of life than taking shortcuts. And I wanted the judge to know that I deserved a second chance.
In March 2024, Johnson wrote a letter to Judge Frederic Block, the judge who had sentenced him. Johnson wrote that he'd done a lot of introspection in his nearly 28 years in prison, and that, quote, I have taken responsibility for the pain that I caused in society when I was ignorant, reckless, and selfish, end quote. Not that Johnson thought his letter would make much of a difference. Block had actually given Johnson a harsher punishment than was mandated by the Three Strikes Law. He'd given Johnson 5 life sentences, not 3. But then one day, Johnson got a call.
I was in my cell speaking to a friend of mine, and my counselor came to my cell and he told me that I had to go to the phone to speak to my attorney. So when he told me that I had to go to the phone to speak to my attorney, I was really, really nervous. And I walked to the phone, to the special phone, to speak to my attorney. And when I got to the phone, I spoke to her, and my release has been granted. And it was the most beautiful day of my life.
In his 26-page ruling, Judge Block explained why he granted Johnson early release. Block said Johnson had proved he was rehabilitated, that he was no longer a threat to society, and that under today's sentencing laws, Johnson would have been given much less time for the same crimes. Block's ruling was dated October 17th, 2024. Walter Johnson was released that same day.
This time it was my time to do that walk. And it was like a movie because everything was so beautiful. So many of the staff members and the officers, they were telling me, congratulations, to have a wonderful life. It just seemed like everyone was so happy for me. And it just made me realize that they were happy for me because they felt that I earned that and that I deserved it. And I'll never forget, they even helped me carry my bags. And then when I walked out that door, my wife was right there waiting for me. It made me think of when we used to go on visits. Many times when I would wait just to see her get in her car. And I would say to myself, one day I'm going to get in that car with her. And that was that day.
Walter Johnson is now 61. He lives in Brooklyn with his wife and does youth outreach. He's also got his own YouTube channel called Walter King TuT Johnson, and he says it's aimed at tough guys like he was. Johnson tells us he loves taking his dog Gabby for a walk, he loves his wife's cooking, and loves just being outside. The air simply feels different, he says, than it did inside Otisville.
Bebo.